questions to Vivienne, please.
I'd just like to hear Vivienne's... Oh, shall I come down?
It's okay.
I'd just like to hear Vivienne's comments on a couple of things. You talked about the word equality, which has been named now a dirty word by our current equality minister. And also, another thing that's been coming out is the idea that we should no longer talk about communities of interest in the equality world, but we should talk about individuals and talk to individuals. That we're all different and we're all individuals. And it's echoes of there's no such thing as society in some respects to me. The other comment, I guess you heard last night that if you're a feminist, you're also an obnoxious bigot. This is the latest thing. And, you know, what can we do when this kind of language and this kind of debate is being engendered from the very top in government?
Okay, so this is a question about inequalities being struck off, about communities of interest no longer being accepted, a sort of decimation of our sort of divide and rule programme. What can we do about it? Over to you.
Yes, well, I think individual and competing needs, which I think first came out of some postmodernist thought, is for me rubbish. We have to start with a clear analysis of inequality and discrimination, and sadly, you know, at least 50 years work by the equality sectors, and the ones that I'm aware of the most being from women in the race sectors, have explained in great detail what inequality is about and why we still face and experience discrimination. And I think we need to be reviving that analysis that talks about institutional discrimination and systemic discrimination backed up by facts. The facts are there, the research is there, it's been, pardon the expression, done to death. And just because it might not be fashionable to refer to that, we should be brave enough to speak our truths. If we are not able to speak our truths, then we might as well just go home, really. And I think Ozzy talked about passion. Yes, passion, absolutely. I think for a lot of women working in the women's sector, it's actually what keeps them going, because people get burnt out in our sector because they do work hard, but the passion carries us through, and the belief in our responsibility to change the world and make it a better place. We have a responsibility. If every individual, and that's where I was all about individuals, if every individual did one thing to make a difference, we'd have a completely different world. And so we do have a lot of power of individuals, but the key thing is the coming together of the individuals into communities of interest. And it is about equalities organisations who, you know, after 25, 30 years of existence, they know intimately what the common themes are that run through their communities of interest. And it's those things that we have to press home. Yes, you can use case studies, but if we go to the individual, what we allow the decision makers to do is go, oh my God, there's so many different individual needs, we can't possibly address them. We'll just do that one because it's easy and it doesn't rattle the cage. So, and as for feminists being called dirty names, well, hey, sticks and stones, babe.
I just wanted to comment on your thing about the Devon situation with domestic violence. I sort of caught the end of the news last night, which said that the scrutiny committee of Devon County Council had backed down slightly. So, and I know there's been a big campaign over the weekend with collective signatures. There's an petition that's around, so sign up and keep it going, because the Beacon Council is also saying, well, we might back down now, but actually there's no money. So domestic violence in Devon, across Devon, will be losing it on the 70s, which is an example of collective action. They very quickly got together and there were emails flying around. I guess a lot of us have got them, so I'm just asking people to report and make a noise about it, because for next, for example, they would use their whole outreach facility, they would use all their children as well, which has been built up over 30 years. So if you care about domestic violence and women's issues, then sign that petition.
And the rationale was that the NHS and the police weren't putting in money. I saw it last night also. So there's a thing about in your sectors, to argue for it in your sectors where you have any kind of influence, to bring it to the attention of those people that these things need to be in place. Hugely important. Any other questions? Yes.
Just carrying on from that, because I work in the domestic violence sector in Cornwall, and we are in the same position, but we haven't gone public because we're trying to be strategic in sort of manipulating what we've got in a sense. But the threat is there, and we were told at one point that all the funding will stop by the 31st of March, and the refuges have been told that they will have at least a 40% cut. So it's, the equality agenda is under attack, and one of the ways that the local authority are trying to control the issue is about approaching all women's organisation, such as the one that I work for, trying to challenge us to force the issue about supporting men. It's not about grabbing the agenda, but just saying that, and we're trying to work out a way of sticking with our core values, but thinking about partnerships and how to develop other options. So we're not backing down, we're trying to work with it, but we're very conscious of equality, impact assessments, etc., if we need to use them. But I was saying to Vivienne earlier, it's very, very difficult situation at the moment, because our local authority hasn't been, that's probably cleverer than Devon, because at least you can now take the fight back, whereas actually we're caught in a rather different situation.
Help us with that, because I hear that quite a lot. Look, we can't concentrate on this because of all the other equality issues, all the other things we've got to bear in mind. Help us with the thinking around how we can tackle that and meet it head on.
So we're talking about the move from, say, women-only services to providing a mixed gender service, or indeed the example of South or Black Sisters, services for black women versus services for all women. This has been under attack for some time with the stuff that came out of the cohesion agenda, where guidance was issued against single group funding, and WRC and lots of other organisations worked really hard to get that pulled back, which eventually it was, but the damage was done in some ways by then, because commissioners and local authorities and other bodies felt that it was legitimate, and in terms of cost efficiency, saying, well, for God's sake, why do we want 10 little services? We can just have one that provides service for everybody. Again, that goes back to the argument about what is inequality, that it's about not having a level playing field. So if you have in a borough one service for women escaping violence that is not either race or cultural specific, then those women won't access that service. That's our members' experience, because it isn't sensitive to the needs of those women. We know in domestic violence, which is probably one of the largest hits of the black women's organisations, have just been decommissioned at a rate of knots, in favour of generic providers. And the argument is, well, there's still a service, but if racism exists within that service, why are those women going to go there? They're not going to go there. It does not meet their needs. And this is when we get back to user-led, led by and for, to create social change, real change. We have to get this argument. I mean, we've been struggling at WRC, I've been there 6 years now, for the whole of those 6 years, about the women-only position of organisations, why that's important, and we started a campaign, I don't know how many years ago, Isabel might remember, about 2 or 3 years ago, called Why Women. I I've got a lovely badge, but it's on my other coat. But it's got a whole raft of research and resources attached to it about why women want women-only services. And this is what you've got to do to make the argument. And I do not think you should give in and go, oh, all right, then we'll go generic. Don't agree with that at all. We're losing ourselves. If we lose ourselves, we might as well just go and work for the Tories. But it is a battle, and it is about ideology, and it is about analysis of inequality and discrimination. I think that's what you've got to be really clear about in your work, and just carry on fighting, and also find other organisations who will support that. So Aussie, where is he? Oh, there you are. You know, you talked about those forums in different parts of this area. You know, would they support that issue that we need to maintain services-led forum by black people and generic services won't work? Find your allies, build the critical mass so that your voice is strong, heard, and has research to back it up. Get your service users to tell their stories about what we've done, that women wouldn't access mixed gender services. Black women would prefer to access services that are made for them. You know, so it's not easy, but you've got to stick with it, and you've got to have massive resilience, passion, analysis, and support. I don't know what else to say, really.
Thank you for that, Ruth.
My question isn't really about a specific area, but it's more about some of the discussions we've had about influencing the local authority. There was a piece of work then called Total Place, which looked at a snapshot of what money do local partnerships and decision-making bodies have at their house. And I think sometimes we're under the mistaken belief that the local authority have this huge pot of money. Nationally, at best, they can have about 25% of local public spend. In many cases, it's as low as 5%. So for me, the battle is, how do I take forward the equality agenda so that other partners put their hand in their pocket, so that they recognise their role in funding domestic violence services for everybody. And I think that's something which will take us a bit longer. And the commissioning models are changing, strategic health authorities are going. It's where the money comes from to resource these initiatives is very rarely under the control of the local authority. They might have one tiny slice of the pie. You know, from our own experience in Plymouth, that is changing rapidly initially because all of a sudden performance reward grant's gone and the partners are having to stop and put their hands in their pockets for 2-year contracts that were signed last year. So we're in a little bit of a safer position in some respects, but not by many months and not by very much money. I don't know how we can take equality issues beyond the realm of just the local authority and into the realms of health authority, universities, colleges, all of those individuals who have pockets of public sector money which they are spending on our behalf effectively. And it's how do we cross that bridge with equality as well. I don't know if you've achieved it in other parts of the country now.
One of our members who is a rape crisis centre in the southeast of England, because lots of small orgs don't have the luxury of a person to go out to all the meetings, attend every local network, whatever going, but they do, and it is really important to have that. I think if people don't have it as individuals, then maybe orgs have to come together and say, all right, we'll send somebody to this meeting, you send somebody to that meeting, whatever your org's area of expertise is, because it is important to get there. But they've spent many years trying to influence the local PCT to say that actually rape is a health issue, and they've managed to do it. It has taken some time. I think the other thing that we've done is we brought together a consortium of women's health orgs, because the Department of Health, I think 2 years ago, announced strategic funding to address health inequalities, and the Department of Health historically have been abysmal in addressing women's inequality. what we've had is predominantly a men's group talking about inequality, which has no analysis of gender inequality whatsoever. And there may be issues of health for men, but actually we need to have a gendered analysis of what's going on. And so we brought together that group of women's and now they are a strategic partner of DOH, which means they've got influence at that level. How that sort of filters through, I don't know, but you have to somehow be able to access those local strategic networks that do have money. In universities, maybe there's a feminist academic who you can get on side. I think the thing is now we've got to be so creative and think in a way that we might not have thought about before, which is really difficult when at the same time you're wondering how you're going to keep your service open. I know it isn't easy, but this is where as well I think local infrastructure bodies come in and where they've got to be listening to equalities organisations. I think the other thing is to create the consortia that you mentioned. I know there's various equality networks around the country and the quality of them may vary, but use some of those routes to get a voice for equalities issues across the board, because there are some common experiences. I mean, even if it's only talking about how do we make an analysis of inequality, that would be a massive gain if we could get all the regional equality networks to go, this is what it's about actually. It's not about fairness for all, it's not about equal opportunity, it's about how do we create a level playing field. So maybe that could be one thing. But I think it is about discussion, debate, listening to what other people have to say and coming up with a shared aim where possible.
Thank you very much for that. And just a plug for Plymouth Plan Equalities Network at this point, because we are in our infancy and we've had a couple of meetings and we really do need you to be in the space and to evolve exactly what Vivienne's saying together. We, at the beginning of a process, we can't do it without the participation of all the equalities groups in Plymouth. We need to have a voice, we need to work together, we need to advocate together, and we need to learn about each other's sectors. As Vivienne's been saying, what are the commonalities, what are the differences? So when any of us are walking into any rooms, we can talk for the whole sector, not just for our individual strand. It's the way we really need to think. So please, please attend the next Equalities meeting, which is in March, the 16th of March. Very important. One last question.
I'm actually here to represent the transgender people, and I've got to say that I know that some of trans women have found, how can I put this politely, a bit of resistance from some women's groups, and I know they're desperate to engage with them, but they just seem to be, the doors seem to be shut. And I just wondered if, please.
Yeah, I know that's a massive issue. I think it's really complicated. And let me firstly say that I don't think anyone should experience discrimination for any reason at all. However, I think what I hear some of these organisations saying, I'm not saying this is right, but I think we need to have a dialogue about it, is that people who are discriminated against choose to self-organise along their lines of experience of discrimination. So women choose to organise because of being discriminated against because they're women. Black women choose to self-organise because of their discrimination on the grounds of race and gender. I think some of that resistance is a lack of awareness, perhaps, of the issues of trans people, not really knowing, but also a fear and a need to protect the space that they have come to know, which is about addressing their issues of discrimination because of their lives as women. And I think we need to somewhere be able to work this out. I don't know what the answers are, I don't. But I think we've got to be able to have a frank discussion. I think it's like any issue of multiple discrimination or intersectionality, where we may not be as sophisticated as we should be. For instance, there's a saying, I think it was Bell Hooks, all the women are white and all the black people are men. You know, so it's a lack of really sophisticated view, and I think we've got some work to do. I'm sorry, I haven't got an answer for you.
I personally think it's, well, we talked about it today, all of us here, is going on commonalities, because they now want rights as women, and they're now prepared to work, and they, well, you know, let's be honest, we've all been sort of campaigning for trans rights, and we can actually take the knowledge that we've got from that, and we're now talking about the, you know, the gender equality sort of, and that sort of thing. We've now got those rights 2010. So, you know, let's work together. Let's share that, and let's develop that commonality and take that forward. And we can do that, but we need people to engage.
Thank you very much for that. That's the end of this morning's proceedings, and Isabel just would like to say a few words before we break for lunch, which is going to be slightly shorter now. I hope you can bear with us. So we're going to have half an hour for lunch, and Isabel will tell us where it's served. Thank you. Oh, and a very, very huge thank you to Vivienne Hayes. That was inspiring.